Okay, so this is statics. So the format is I'm gonna do, lecture on the computer. You'll have access to the videos and access to the notes afterwards. And we're pretty much gonna have exams every Friday. It's a accelerated class. So there'll be, 4 2-hour lectures every week. Exam will take the whole period on Friday. You probably won't actually need the full 2 hours, but there's not going to be any lecture after the exam or anything. So when you're done with the exam, you can go. And every class, it's a 2-hour lecture. So we're going to take a 10-minute break in the middle. And every class, there'll be some time, at least one time where we break up into little groups and you work on something. It won't be to hand in, but just to try to solidify the stuff that we've been talking about that day in class. So today, I'm going to start out by going over the syllabus, just the structure of the class. And after that, we'll get into material. I'm going to always make an effort. So you have a test on Friday. You ready for it? So I'm going to always make an effort to, make sure that the test doesn't cover anything after Wednesday of that week, so you at least have one day. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's just hard to do it any better than that with the accelerated schedule. So we'll see how far we get by the end of Wednesday this week, but that'll pretty much be the material that'll be on the test on Friday. And, I'll go into a lot of detail about that and stuff. Okay. So this is the syllabus. My name's Guy O'Lakin. I did graduate school. I did a master's in biomedical engineering right after college, and then worked a little while, and then went back and did a PhD in engineering mechanics. And engineering mechanics kind of it entails deform type stuff, statics type stuff, dynamics type stuff. So the 3 classes I'm teaching this summer are right in my preferred area. If you ever end up in like an electrical engineering class and I'm teaching it, be very concerned, But this stuff I feel pretty comfortable with. My office is 2302 upstairs, but office hours I'm not going to do in my office. The way I'm going to do them is sort of like a study hall. So I'll find out what lab is going to be open during the office hour times, and I'll just be in there. And the way we've done it in the past is anybody who can make it just comes in and works on problems. There'll be other students there to bounce ideas off of, and I'll be there if you get stuck. And it just seems to work really well, Nice place to get comfortable working with each other, and so you don't have to wait until you have a question to come to office hours or whatever. You can just work on stuff, and then if you get stuck, I'm right there. So I'll find out the room number for that. It'll probably be one of the 2 labs just right next to us here, either 1324 or 1320. The class time. So you're the people who already know the class time. Good job. There might be other people who don't know it, but they're not getting the benefit of this lecture. And office hours. So class time is Monday through Friday, 2 hours every weekday. Office hours, I'm just going to do from Monday through Thursday, because Friday will be after an exam going into the weekend. No one would come anyways. So, but if for some reason those office hours don't work, or like if there is a week that you want to talk to me on Friday, just send me an email, and I'd be happy to meet outside of these times. This is just a convenient set of times. The best way to get a hold of me is my email. Sometimes I don't get back to email, and sorry about that. If I don't get back to you, you send me an email, and then it's been like 24 hours and I haven't gotten back to you, just send me another email. Just say like, you didn't respond to my email, and then I'll be sort of embarrassed, and then I'll get right back to you. But the way it happens is like I get my email on my phone, and I think to myself, like, oh, I got to get back to that, but first I have to look something up, it's some question. Like if you ask me a question, I can answer just like on the fly. I'll get right back to you. But if it's like, okay, well, I need to look at my notes and do this, then I'll plan on writing back to you. But then in the meantime, all these new emails come in and yours goes below where the screen is. And then you can't expect me to remember it anymore after that. It's like impossible. So anyways, if I don't get back to you, just send me another one. That's my office phone number. I don't know. I'm not probably going to be in there too much outside of office hours and class time and stuff. So you can leave messages, but email probably works better. The prerequisites for this class are Physics 1. So you don't have to have taken Physics 2 and Calculus 2. And I believe differential equations is a co-requisite, but if all of our prerequisites and co-requisites are just set up to match the ones at the U. So if you don't have differential equations, it won't be a problem in the least. Actually, even Calc 2, we're not going to use that much in this class. It's not a very calculus-heavy class. You need some kind of graphing calculator. I'm going to give a lot of examples of how to do things on TI calculators. And the one I have is a TI-89. And if you're in the market for a calculator, question?
Will you allow the Inspire?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, any graphing calculator is fine with me. It's just, and I can probably help you figure out how to do this stuff on other calculators if you get stuck on something. But TI-89 is just the one I happen to know because it's the one I have. I like the TI-89 particularly because it does eigenvalues and eigenvectors, and that's something that probably for most of you hasn't come up too much yet, but starting pretty soon it's going to come up in every single engineering class, and so it's a nice thing to have. I mean, you can always use MATLAB instead or, some other software package, but it's sort of nice to have the ability to do it just right in your pocket all the time. Okay, a couple people have emailed me about this. I'm sure a lot of people are curious about this. There's no textbook required for the class. Everything that you need is going to be given in class, but I think it's a good idea to get some kind of reference book for later. And these are the two I recommend. Beer, Johnson, and Mazurek. This is the book that they use at the U of Minnesota. So, that's the one that I used to require. It's pretty expensive, obviously, and there's no reason you have to have the latest version of this. So, is that from in here? Is that Mike? So, if you want to save some money, look on eBay or look around on Amazon for an older edition of this book. That'll work perfectly fine. Really, the only thing that changes for the most part, edition to edition, is like what number each problem is. They just they sort of hold you hostage because you need the book for the problems. And so you need your problems to match the professor's book. But as a reference book, you can get any edition that that you can get. And then this is the one that really, the Shams outlines are so useful, and they're like $15 per book. I'd recommend getting this for every engineering class. It's cheap enough that, you might as well. It isn't very wordy, which in a lot of ways is sort of nice. They assume that you've taken the class or that you have a different main textbook. And then they just give brief little reminders of the ideas, and then just tons and tons of problems with solutions. So it's a great way to, keep your skills up, like especially if you're going to take the fundamentals of engineering exam. I think a lot of people take that like sophomore or junior year. This book is a great way to get ready for exams like that. But other than that, so the way I'm going to teach this class differs in a lot of ways from the way it's presented in either of these two books. And I would recommend just taking your notes for this class and just keeping them with all your textbooks. The notes, you know what I mean? Just think of the notes that you take in this class is your textbook for this class, and you're going to want to have them available to you 5 years from now when you need to solve a statics problem or something. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. So the basic ideas of this class are we're going to be doing vector calculations. Even when we do scalar calculations, they're going to tend to be they're going to tend to be just a part of a problem that's actually a vector problem. Like statics is just very naturally done in a vector form. By the way, all of mechanics is kind of broken up into force, like Newtonian type approaches versus energy type approaches. There are energy approaches for statics, dynamics, deform, and there are also force and acceleration approaches to all of those. This class is going to mainly focus on, like right at the end, we'll do some energy stuff. But for the most part, it's going to be all talking about forces and accelerations using Newton's laws. And if you ever want to sound smarter than you are, you should, for the most part, just generally speaking, force and acceleration formulations are called Lagrangian approaches, and energy methods are called Eulerian approaches. So, throw those words around and, people will be like, yikes. They'll be like embarrassed to ask you any more about it because they don't want to look dumb. It's an important part of like getting good jobs and stuff. Okay, so we'll be doing all this vector stuff, and we'll learn how to calculate centroids, which come up in a lot of different mechanics applications. The biggest part of this class is just getting really good at free body diagrams and using Newton's laws. So I would say if there was one skill that you should come out of this class really, really good at, it's drawing free body diagrams. And then we'll use Newton's laws to calculate joint reaction forces, which is the main kind of calculation we'll be doing. So you see a big structure, like a bridge or something, and you apply a force here and a force here, and you want to know what are the reaction forces at the pin holding this member to this member in the middle of the bridge. Those are the kind of calculations we'll do. And it obviously has a lot of applications to civil engineering and many kinds of mechanical engineering, like in engines and stuff, and many applications to aerospace engineering. And so like at the University of Minnesota, I think those are the 3 departments where this class is required: aerospace, mechanical, and civil. Yep. And then right at the end, course objectives and topics are sort of, I'm not, like, even though I wrote this, I'm not even sure like how these two are different. You know that feeling when you write a paper and you don't even like understand your own paper? That's like what this is. But After we're done with all the Newtonian stuff, we're going to do a little bit of an energy approach, virtual work, which is an approach that's often used in civil engineering. And even though it won't be super helpful to us in this class, like for the most part, using a Newtonian approach will always be the simpler way to go about the kind of problems we have. It's a first look at an energy approach, and it's useful in that sense. Energy approaches are going to come up consistently in your classes. Sometimes they'll be more useful, sometimes less, but it's just nice to start to understand how those work. Okay, so for assignments, I'm going to give two kinds of homework. One, obviously, is stuff that you're going to turn in, and that counts for part of your grade. But then the more important part are problems that I'm going to give you that I'm not going to collect. I'm going to give you full solutions to them. Those are going to be very similar to the problems that are going to be on the exams. Those are what I'm calling practice problems in the syllabus. So the biggest thing you need to do to get ready for exams is just really understand the practice problems, understand, it's not just a matter of memorizing the solutions, it's about understanding why at each step you made the decision you did. If you can go through every practice problem and at every step ask yourself, like, okay, you know what to do, and you also know why you did that and what you would do if, like when you would do something different instead of the decision you made. If you can think through every practice problem in that kind of detail, the test should be very stress-free and you shouldn't have any problems really. Okay, so the practice problems are the most important things for the exam, but I will give you a few problems that you turn into me too. Okay. Grading for the class. I normally don't have to curve this class. I will if I have to. But most likely it's just going to be a straight grading scale where to get an A you need to be above 92%. I know that's sort of unusual in engineering type classes, but to me it just makes so much more sense. I mean, like, as an engineer, like, you need to make sure that you're designing things that are going to work. You don't, like, when you're working, it's like companies aren't allowed to say, like, hang their hats on having a success rate of 60% on the things they design. Like, so to me it makes sense that you should know the stuff that we're talking about inside and out. I'm going to tend to make like I said, the exams are going to be very similar to the practice problems, so you won't ever see anything where you just had no idea it was coming. And so I think it's pretty easy to know whether you're prepared for an exam or not, and I just expect you to know all the stuff that's on those practice problems backwards and forwards, and if you do, you'll score much higher than you have in at least some of your science and engineering classes. I never give tests where the class average is 50 or something. Usually the class average is 85 or 80 or something. You know what I mean? The grading for the class is broken down 80% for exams. So exams are by far the biggest part. And then 10% for those problems, that handful of problems that you will turn into me. And then lecture quizzes is another 10%. And actually lecture quizzes are kind of part of the exam. So really you could think of it as exams are 90% of the class. It's just broken up into two different types of questions. For the exams, there'll be a total of 5. So there'll be one on each Friday, except the last day of the class is the last Thursday, not the last Friday. So in the last week of the class, exam 5 will be on Thursday. the first 4 are just going to be subject exams, like the stuff that we've covered that week. And each one of those will be worth 15% of your grade. And then the one on that last Thursday, the last day of class, will be worth 20%, and that's cumulative. Also, so this is the way that I deal with makeup exams, missing exams. Basically, I expect you to be able to be here for the exams, and I give one little bit of wiggle room. So if you miss an exam, I'm not going to write a new makeup exam for you. At the time you miss it, you get a 0 on the test, okay? And nobody likes zeros on exams, right? Because it lowers your grade, etc. But the way that you can make it up is on the last Monday of the class, I'll make new versions of all of the first 4 exams, okay? And everybody can choose one of those 4 exams to take the makeup for, okay? So like if you missed exam 2, you got a 0 for that at the time, but then in the last week of the class, you take the new version of exam 2, and that your score for that replaces your 0, okay? If you haven't missed any exams, it's sort of incentive to come to all the exams, because then you get a chance to look at what all your scores were, try to figure out which one you could do better on, and get a second crack at one that you weren't happy with your score on. And then so if, say you took them all and you weren't happy with your exam 4, so you take the retest of exam 4, I'll take the higher of your the 2 times you took exam 4. So like if you got 80% on exam 4, retook it and got 70%, I'd still take the 80. So there's no risk doing the makeup exam. But other than that chance to make up one exam, I'm not going to do any other makeups. Okay, so if you leave for a wedding or something, that's fine, but that's your one makeup. Okay. There's a couple reasons I do it that way. One is it just takes all the, like, I don't want to have to try to think about, like, do I have to write another exam, or is this a person who I really trust and like I'm going to use the old exam, like all that kind of stuff. It's just like it's not fun to try to sort through all that stuff. And nobody wants to make up new exams for every person who retakes it, So like, say 3 people miss an exam. One person wants to retake it Tuesday. One person takes it Wednesday. You have to write different, it's just a real mess. So this is the way that I do makeup exams. The other benefit of this is if there's a topic that you didn't do that well on, it gives you a reason to study it over again and try to understand it a second time. And I like that, there are always people who do badly on a test and then come back for the makeup and do really well on it. And that's great, So that's the way I do it. And it says here, this is what I was saying before about the practice problems. The most important thing to do to get ready for those exams is to work through the practice problems and understand them inside and out. And I would recommend doing each one at least twice, understand what the tricky step of each problem is. You should be able to imagine somebody asking you at each thing you do, why did you do that? Why is this negative? Why did you add up these forces here? And you should be able to give answers to all those questions. Okay. The exam questions won't be exactly like the practice problems, but they'll be procedurally, they'll be very similar. Okay. Like you'll go through the same steps as the practice problems to do the the exam. It's not like it'll just be the same question with new numbers, but it'll be similar ideas. And the way I tend to grade, it says here, is if you make procedural mistakes, if there are mistakes in understanding, I mean, I tend to take off a lot of points for that. If you just make a mistake with your arithmetic or whatever, I probably am more lenient on that kind of stuff than the average grader. I just want you to show that you understand how to do these problems. Any questions about this so far?
I have a question.
Yeah.
About the actual graded homework. How much of that is there exactly, or do you know?
I'm just going to give one a week, and it's going to be like one question. The graded homework is going to be a little, so if you think of the kind of questions that can be on a test, if a test is at most 2 hours, and I want to get a bunch of different topics on it, none of those problems can be very long, so in a way they can't be that complicated, you know. And the practice problems are like those exam questions. So the practice problems and the exam questions are just testing that that you really understand how to do kind of the simple end of problems. And then those problems you're going to turn in, I'll just assign like one problem at a time, but it'll take longer, you know, combining different topics, you know, making you try one approach and get stuck and go back and think about it again. It's not like it'll take that long, but it'll be a lot more involved than like one practice problem. And you guys can work together on those too. Any other questions? Yep.
When are the lecture quizzes?
They're part of the exam, so it's on Friday. It's just like the first page of the exam. Anything else? Yep. I'll tell you. I think I'll probably just make it Monday of every week. Hand it in on Monday. Yep.
How many questions do you have?
It depends on the topic. I try, so we have 2 hours to work. My goal is to make it so that the average person in the class finishes the test in about like 75 minutes. So you'll have plenty of time to work on stuff. For some topics, that's 6 questions. For other topics, that's only 1 or 2 questions. But I'll try never, like it's never my intention to make it feel like a race against the clock, you know. Any other questions? Okay, here's the exam schedule. Like I said, it's just Friday, 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 Friday. And then the makeup exam, you can make up any of the first 4 subject exams. And then the final, the cumulative final, is on the last day of class. So with problem sets, I think working together is a great idea, and it's a skill that if you get good at it, comfortable working together, thinking through things with other people, it's going to help you a lot in engineering school as you go on. And a lot, I mean, is in most likely when you go on to whatever job you do, it'll be a really useful skill to be able to work with other people. But it gets sort of tricky because I'm grading you individually, you know what I mean? So to me, the distinction is I want you to feel free to work with each other, to understand the material as much as you want, as much as possible. But once you get that, once you work together to gain that understanding of the problems, you should be able to go off on your own and write up the problem, work through the problem by yourself without looking at any of the notes that you've made working together. Okay? to me, that's what it means to actually have internalized what you gained from working together. If you can't do that, to me, it's really, you might sort of trick yourself into thinking that you understand it, but to me, that's what it means to really understand something. Is you can go off now, put your notes that you made aside as you were thinking through them with somebody else, and write out and calculate out the problem. Okay. If, like, on the other hand, if you work with somebody else, and then as you're writing out the solution that you're going to hand in to me, you're writing and you're like, oh, what did we do? Like, oh yeah, now I get it. That to me is not gaining a full understanding of the problem. So to me, that's cheating. It's kind of, anyways, if that distinction isn't clear to you, I'd be happy to talk to you about it later. But that's kind of how I think about it. I don't care how you gain the understanding. You need to learn the problem, but you have to fully understand how to do the problem when you write the thing that you turn into me. It says the due date this basically says that the due dates are very rigid. I don't take anything late or whatever. Well, really the truth is, I'll pretty much, I'll take things late without too much trouble. But what I would recommend is that you treat it like those are hard deadlines, and then just only if something unexpected comes up, use the wiggle room. Like, yeah, you want to turn something in on Wednesday instead of Monday. I have no problem with that. But the problem is, if you keep doing that with every assignment, you keep getting pushed further and further behind. And by the end of the semester, there's going to be a problem. Okay, so yeah, if you want to have something you want to get in a day or two late, that there'll never be a problem with that. But I would recommend trying to stay on the schedule. Okay, and then the lecture quizzes. So like I said, the lecture quizzes are going to be a first sheet. So the exam will probably be like one page with a front and a back. The front is going to be the lecture quiz, and the back is going to be the exam. The lecture quiz isn't going to have any calculations involved. It's just going to be checking to make sure that you're going through the notes in the detail that I think is, necessary. So it's going to be questions about what I say in class. It's never my intention to make them super nitpicky questions. I try to focus on what I consider to be the really important issues in the class. But yeah, that's what the lecture quizzes are, just kind of short answer questions. An example might be, does the order of input vectors in the cross product affect the answer? Like later today we'll be doing the vector review, and that'll come up. And you would just answer, hopefully you would answer yes, the order changes the sign of the output vector, something like that. That'll be the lecture quiz. Any questions about the lecture quiz or the exam? And then the exam is just going to be calculations like the practice problems. But to me, those lecture quizzes, it's just important, like, especially in a 5-week class where you're not letting this material soak in for as long as you are in a full semester. It's just really important to me that you have strongly remember some of the ideas that I think help you kind of hang your hat on the material so it doesn't just drift out of your mind as soon as you leave, you know. Okay, expected time commitment. So every summer there's some people who take this class while working full time. And I know there are some people who can do it, but generally speaking, I don't recommend that. This is a full semester class condensed into 5 weeks. You know, basically the time is cut into 1/3 of the original time, and so it's like taking, it's like taking 3 classes at once. And so it's, even though it's a 3 credit class, it's kind of approaching like a full load, just taking this one class. And so, yeah, you should keep that in mind as you're setting your schedule for this class. And if you're taking another class at the same time, or if you're really working a lot, you really need to think about whether you can handle this, time requirement. So I think it's worth thinking about this in terms of numbers. If you Google how many hours studying you're supposed to do in college for each hour you spend in class, no matter who writes about it, what university you're talking about, what department you're talking about, it seems like there's a pretty standard answer for how much time you should spend outside of class. People say 2 to 3 hours for every hour of lecture time. Okay. Well, we have 10 hours of lecture time. So actually the numbers, we just increased the number of lecture hours this year because we were getting cut short a little bit in the summers in the past. So this 16 and 24 is actually wrong. But okay, so 10 hours of lecture time a week. That means 20 to 30 hours of study time is just the standard expected amount of time that you put into this class outside of class, So that means on the low end, a total time commitment of 30 hours. On the high end, a total time commitment of 40 hours just for this one class. And, that's, so if you're trying to work 40 hours in addition to that, or trying to do another class similar to this at the same time, you can see how you could get into trouble, I would recommend, I don't think that the way that I do this class, it's definitely not like a brutal engineering class, I think for most people here, if you did the low end of that, 20 hours of study time, most people here would do well in the class. There'll be some people who will have a little extra trouble with some of the topics, and those people will have to do more to do well in the class. But what I would recommend is that you go to your calendar, go to your day planner, block out the other stuff you have on your schedule, and find, 20, 25 hours, something like that, of free time that you're planning every single week to spend working on this class, And if you can make it, I'd say it's a great idea to make 4 of those hours be those, the sort of study hall thing, my office hours. In the past, the way it's worked is people would go to that, work on problems for an hour while I'm there, and usually I would stay, a little longer, but eventually, like, I would go home and I just leave people in the room, and they'd all, people would keep working on stuff together. So I would recommend taking advantage of that. But yeah, just figure out where you're going to get those extra hours. And if you look at your schedule and you just don't have time for that, I know everyone's lives are busy and stuff, but taking this class right now just probably isn't a very good idea, Any questions about that? And cheating, usually when cheating comes up in this class, it comes up as copying the person next to you on a test. I'm going to do assigned seating for exams. I know that's sort of a nuisance, but I've had some issues with copying on tests, and I just want to try to do everything to just make it so nobody has to think about that. But if there is evidence of cheating, what I'll probably do, what I've done in the past, is give you a 0 on that exam, and then not give you the chance to make that exam up. So basically it just cuts 15 or 20% off your maximum possible grade. You won't automatically get an F, but it's a pretty significant penalty. And so anyways, just please don't do that. Keep your eyes on your own paper, and we won't have any problems. Does anyone have any questions about anything on the syllabus? Mm-hmm.
Where was the lab for out of class you're talking about?
Well, I have to see where it's open for office hours. It's either S1324, the next class over, or S1320, which is just at the end of the hall, just depending on which of those labs is being used by another class. But it just has, it's a lab class, so there's tables that you can sit around, and I'll be sitting up at like a teacher station like this, and if you have questions, I can answer them, write stuff up on the board. There's a big whiteboard. It works really nice for working together. In the past, there'd always be some people working out problems on the board, some people sitting at tables doing stuff, some people drinking beer, whatnot. Not really. Any other questions? Okay. Well, let's take a 10-minute break. Come back, and at 1:55, I'll start going over statics material. Okay?